Good evening. Welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today we have on Jennifer Precious Finch. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing really well. How are you?
Good. I'm glad to have you on. I know been a fan of yours, well, from the very beginning. I'm glad we could talk. And I'm excited to pass, well, it's not so new, but to me in COVID, everything kind of time froze. But in
hmm
2019, you
hmm
guys also put out a really great album. And
Oh, thank you, Scatter the Rats.
yes, and I wanted to talk about that because I don't think, well, with COVID, everything, I don't think everything just kind of washed over. I don't think it got the attention it deserved. I mean, yeah, there's press on it, of course, but it kind of took the wind out of the sails of everybody. So I wanted to bring
hmm
focus onto that process. It had been the first album you did in a while too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we actually did a couple shows around it in 2019, and then of course that was it. We played with Nirvana in January with Dave Grohl, and then that was it. A couple days later, it was lockdown, so everything got canceled, and as for everybody.
Like writing a new album and stuff. How did that happen? You guys get together and do the album. I know you guys have been together. What 2014? You guys get back together working on the documentary, which is really great
Well,
too.
yeah, it really started with working on the documentary as kind of a legacy piece. We didn't really think about if we were going to do shows, it would be legacy. And we just let everything tear out very naturally, like however it felt, like no expectations. The
Mhm.
success was being in the process, right? So we worked on the documentary with some producers and a director, and that was released, and decided to do some shows, and then decided to do a single. And then we're like, maybe we could just record and just do a new record. And everyone came together with their material and we did it.
Are you guys located nearby each other, or was it like one of those sending each other music back and forth type of deal? It's
I think that it we started very much with the way that we had always worked in the past. And I think that's very natural for people that have worked in groups, that have worked
mhm.
together for like extended periods of time. You kind of default. And I always like to say it's sort of like having that friend that you just never have time to call, but you realize you were friends when you called. So you just forget you can text them and just tell them you're thinking about them or whatever. And
Right.
then you have to kind of recreate how you communicate. And I think that's happening with bands now more so than ever, because we're trying to, we're navigating a new world, we're navigating new technology, and, we're kind of bringing our relationships forward into the future. And I think now is like more important than ever to do that with any relationship. Yeah, so we got together a lot and we played, and these were some riffs, and we had gone out on tour and would just maybe play some stuff at soundcheck or whatever. And then really this record really became over COVID, some of us were just a little bit more averse with jumping on Zoom and maybe playing together a
Yeah.
little bit, like and it's evolving, and it will evolve.
Well, that's what's an interesting question because a lot of bands love to play together, and a lot of them are like, "When's this happen?" They froze. They're like, "You know what? We're gonna hold on this because we want to be together in a room." Some bands kind of took,
Sure.
well, let's see what's going on, and some people are like, "You know what? This is great because when we're done, I can just hit the stop button and I can go upstairs to my house. I don't have to deal with it. Just to travel." Everyone has a different view on how well it works. So I'm always curious to see how each band is handling the change. Because some bands live in different countries and they're able to contact each other,
No,
which is
it's of course it's really about the group and their proficiency and inspiration and comfort. I mean, I think that what we're dealing with now in my generation or whatever is, we work together and feel that kind of, that in-person inspiration.
mhm,
And a lot of this was a lesson on how to generate your own inspiration and generate your own work and be productive in your own work. I, over COVID, have worked with different groups doing different stuff. Also, I've contributed music over COVID to different people. And even right now, as we're speaking, I'm working with a band from Amsterdam, and we're sending tracks back and forth. And a couple of the members in that group are older and want me to fly in. And the engineers and I are kind of talking on the side, like, do we really need to do that?
yeah.
Does everybody really need to be in the same room? And the answer is possibly. I mean, that's where the magic can happen. So I think sometimes listening even to professional recorded pop music over,
Yeah.
80s and 90s, you can kind of hear the difference between professionals coming together and not playing with each other versus a band, which is played together and I know every nuance inside and out of L7. Like I know every slow snare hit, every, quick guitar stroke. And as a bass player, really like tune into all of those kind of nuances to the point that people sit down and try to play L7 songs and they don't get it. They think it's easy punk rock, but they don't realize that there's actually a nuance of four musicians who have been on the road together for many, many years, even prior to our biggest releases. And, Bricks Are Heavy in 92, with Beauty Process, Hungry for Stink. We had been on the road together for years prior to recording that. And there's nuances in there you can only get when people are friends and know each other and go through the trials and tribulations of being in a band. The music reflects that.
That is reinforced in the excellent documentary I'm going to encourage people to see. It shows how close you guys are, and it's even the arc. If I'd say, like, listen, if you're not even a music fan, you're rooting for the characters of you guys because the closeness and the bond and what you guys work on, that plays into your music though. I mean, that's something you can't replace anywhere else, and a lot of bands aren't like that. And actually, I can't think of a lot of bands that I don't think I've ever heard anybody do a cover song really, or maybe, besides you being single, no one really does it, you guys, no one does cover you guys like that. You're one of those bands, at least in my area.
Fuel My Fire was covered. Oh my gosh, I'm clearly like unprepared. We've had covers.
Well, what I'm saying, not like every a certain band that can easily cover every band. I'm agreeing with you.
Right.
It's more of a challenge. You guys are not the same You're not a commodity that's easily copied, and the people that do like you don't want to mess it up. They want to do you right. That's what I
don't
think.
know. Do you think that's what it is? Or I think that like there isn't like a lot of people that listen to L7 and are really able, they just don't have context to like derive actually how brilliant it is. And I'm in the band, so it's like a hard thing to talk about. But yeah, it's the Prodigy that covered Fuel My Fire, by the way, if anyone wants to look at
Yes, I do remember that now.
Yeah,
I was thinking like local bands time jamming out, kind of like you don't really see that. You're not going to walk into a club. I've never walked to a club and seen another band.
I once in a while we see it. There
That's
are
good.
cover bands. We've had a drag queen band cover us, which is
Awesome.
always, when you look
Awesome.
I always say there's nowhere left in society. We're so beyond farce and parody right now, but in the drag scene, it just can go so far. It's still brilliant. Even in 2022, as we're doing this interview, it's the only place now that I think like parody still works. It's still funny.
Well, you guys have been very important in sticking up for women's rights for years, which has been fantastic. Being a father of,
Well, it's
I think
it's hard not to, right?
Well, it's hard not to be human. It's actually hard not to be a human being, and not. It's ridiculous that it had to be a thing. It's not just it just should be a right, But in context, it was always good to see that somebody saying something and doing something. Even at from the very beginning, I was always glad to see that.
Yeah,
Even as a guy.
It's interesting too, because definitely like what we were doing to forward the rights of all human beings was to be ourselves without compromising to the expectations, I think, of society, right? Like that was our biggest contribution. But it's also the media and perception that applies that just to women's rights. I mean, all of us have worked for trans rights, gay rights, against poverty, all kinds of issues, but it makes sense to label us sort of into the women's rights movement, which I'm grateful for. And yeah.
It's really, and yeah, it's good to see. Here's the thing, and I know you guys had this too, and I'll say to other people, it was always awful to hear them saying, what's it like to be a woman or a female band or a girl band, when you don't hear, no one is sitting down and saying to Motorhead, what's it like to be an all guy band,
Of course, but we
know
why, right?
I know why, and it's easy thinking, but to me, I always was like, oh my God, they're just a band, talk about their music. You know, there's so much, they're so entertaining. There's so much to talk about. And comparing
Sure.
that, I always thought it was lazy, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
and to me, it was great to see the interviews and how you would always take the wind out of the interviewers when they would do that. So I always enjoyed that for doing that. But
Yeah,
the
it's
world's
super
changed,
interesting.
you know, and I would hope that you guys have less questions like that and you get more just people finally catching up to who you guys are as a band, and playing out. Do you think people are starting to catch up to you? Yeah.
I mean, in order to answer that would mean that I have to have reflected on it. And I think that the beauty of my participation in L7 is that we don't have to reflect on marketing angles to be able to be successful in what we do. And I think that's a much broader conversation than being female,
I was
right?
getting more just as successful as when you talk to people, they stop giving you the garbage of being just a girl band and you're just a band. You just treated for who you are. I think
Yeah, I
success is
think that there's
different than
probably just a little more. Also, we're out, we're kind of out of a certain area of our lives. And also so much of the nuances and experiences that we've had have been more broadcasted. So there's more to talk about.
when you did the documentary. Was there did you guys have a ton of footage, or did people have to get where all the footage come from? Because there's some great footage in it. It's really fun.
It's all of our footage. All of our footage. We went through it. It was some of it. I mean, I would just text Anita and be like, there's 40 minutes of this. You do this. And she'd text me and say I can't even watch this anymore. Can you skim through it and tell me what's on it? There was so much. I think probably just in the cameras, I had 56 hours, maybe.
No way. Holy
Just
moly.
in my cameras. So, I mean, I have been just a documentarian my whole life. I've always hid behind something, whether it's an instrument or a camera. And I was a photographer since I was 12. I went out and realized that there was just a certain magic with visual media. And I've been a photographer since, and an archivist.
What are you doing with your photographs right now? I know for a while you were starting to do some stuff with them. Are you going to be doing more stuff, putting your photographs out some more, or?
Yeah, currently for the next year, I'm just going through and kind of writing about my work a little bit, and I'm releasing it slowly in small bodies as fanzines. So I just released a fanzine this year. I made, I don't know, I think 55 issues, and I just sell them to my newsletter. And people on my newsletter, I just hey, I'm working on this project, and everyone kind of shows up and purchases it, and we can be in conversation about it, which I love. I think that media is a conversation. So things like books and documentaries actually don't kind of turn me on that much, because I feel like they're more milestones. Since I kind of even albums, you know what I mean? If ever there was an era I should have been 25-year-old in, it would be this one. This is kind of where I feel the most comfortable, actually, as a visual artist.
Really?
And I know nobody ever wants to hear that, but it's the truth. When we had to go on this last tour with L7, just did a month long, very successful, awesome
Yes,
tour through the
congratulations
US.
on that. I'm so happy to see that.
Yeah, I had to pick up a bass rig. I don't own a bass rig right now. I don't own any stuff. And I'm just oh my God, if I have to have another SVT Ampeg, I can't. Everything was so large and heavy. And that's this thing that no one talks about, that heavy music was created by really heavy equipment. So you had to be strong to play music. And I actually, I'm very grateful. I had a couple companies that kind of, vied for me playing their equipment. And we were doing these conversations like you and I are having, and we talked about tone and all this, frequency and all this stuff. And then I just said, can you turn around and pick that rig up for me? And the guy was just oh yeah, it's totally manageable. I okay, Black Star, winner.
Well, that is true. I mean, well, luckily things have got a little bit lighter. But yeah, and even the basses used to be super heavy. I know they've got a little bit lighter, but basses used to be super heavy, you know, to
Oh my
play.
God, I still have neck and shoulder problems. In order for me to go
I
out
was
on
gonna, I was gonna
tour,
ask you that. How's your back doing?
yeah, I have to go to a PT, like a physical therapist for at least 5 times. So it's really interesting because you think like, well, you just jump into the van and throw your bass in the back and go on tour. And I'm just like, I need ibuprofen and ice and a physical therapist and a regular therapist and Pilates classes and like all of these things that I wish I did when I was younger because I probably wouldn't have the problems I have now.
My daughter plays bass, so when I grab her bass, I'm like, man, it's so much heavier. It's you're unrelenting, that instrument. Um,
I hate watching other people, like the videos of other people play. And often when I go see bands play, I let go of the visual of the band. I don't like to necessarily watch them. I like to hear. I went and saw the Psychedelic Furs the other night playing in Los Angeles. And I don't know if you've ever seen that bass player, but he's so tall. And the bass looks like this tiny little instrument on his
really?
body. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's like what I've done as a 5'2" person actually is pretty remarkable with these like ridiculous logs with strings. Great show. I'm just
Oh,
gonna say it's a great
well,
show. My friend Amanda plays keyboards.
mhm.
She's writing a book right now on women musicians and alternative music, more from like an 80s generational
Yep.
stand, of course. And it's really good. She let me read it. And it's interesting. It's an interesting read.
Well, you have also been, and this is kind of funny. As you were talking earlier, you also obviously you're very much into computers and networking and computers knowledge. But earlier
Mhm.
on, there's a clip out there of you, was it AOL or something? You were very early
Sure.
on doing like blogs and stuff when nobody was doing it. In fact, I was even touching computers with dial up until I could do something for real on a computer, I have no desire, you know, to like really something I could really do a lot, something more meaty. But you were right
No,
in at the very
that's true.
beginning.
Yeah, I was obsessed with computers and gaming I mean, maybe late 70s.
But that's an
I
awesome
just
video of
loved
you.
it.
It's great. It's totally awesome.
Yeah. I originally, went to San Francisco State University in the 80s because they were going to do something like a equivalent of a digital media music department.
Mhm.
And they never got it off the ground. So I left school to join L7 in 86. And that's part of my story is I started with like this computer engineering education, which was boring. I mean, that was horrible. You know what I mean? Like there was no, of course, like anyone who knows the industry, there was no UI then. There was no visual aspect to it. So I was just immediately kind of like cut out. But then in the 90s, AOL and CompuServe started to emerge with like visual components,
Yeah.
and fonts started to get applied to documents and all this like way more interesting stuff. And I was super obsessed with like how to build community with this. I really thought it was like this outlier, awesome. It was like what was going to save the world. And of course, now we're seeing it die. I don't know what happened with Twitter. To me, Twitter was like smart people who can say concise, interesting things and
And there were some funny
a
people
couple.
on there too in the beginning. In the very beginning,
All
there's some
right, just a
funny.
couple.
Oh, it's great.
Exactly. Right. And it's interesting because, I still feel the same way about visual media. So I've always been more of an Instagram person, even like right in Instagram in '06, like never really got into Facebook, really into the idea of just here's instantly the visual of what I'm doing, like the prime, like prior to Kardashian and all this kind of stuff that got into it. But now I'm really liking um, Instagram Reels because
Yep.
comedians are using it. So I'm like, oh, this is how my technology, like when I think about my personal technology path, it really is about who's consuming what's funny. And that
No,
it's always been like that. Like who's funny, I'll go to that platform. Who
I
can do
think
funny?
that's it's probably the closest to being the most purist too right now. Is because you can kind of filter through it without who you want to be with. Facebook I do only because of the show. Otherwise, I'm not on it. YouTube has a good point
I
for
mean,
for for, for
I've been doing UI for years. I still develop like on WordPress. I still do websites. I'm a creative director at Weekly World News. I don't know, a lot of people don't know that.
No, but
but I'm
share
part of
this
like,
is
yeah, I'm part of like the group of artists that kind of bought into bringing back Weekly World News. So
mhm.
yeah, I mean, yeah. I was gonna say something else, but I diverged myself.
Okay. Well, the
Um,
world has changed with media. I mean, it's a hard term because it feels like every time something comes out, it gets polluted. You know,
mhm.
what are you gonna say? I feel it's gonna be
Yeah,
pretty funny. You know,
for sure.
you, but I wanted to say at the very beginning, it was very. What I always thought was very cool is it would have been very punk, do it yourself, DIY, when you first getting into the beginning when the internet was breaking out, and doing
Mhm.
blogs and doing that kind of stuff. It was very friendly of, but it would have been easier for people to reach more people than just, local. It would have made it easier for like-minded people to blog to each other or do these magazines or fanzines to each other virtually. It would have been a better, it could have been, more pure. Obviously the internet's changed a lot. You know,
Mhm.
the potential went out the window.
Yeah, but I think it just still proves that people are more niche than they think they are as far as their interests. I still think
Mhm.
that the internet or like being in like on screen time still represents a lot of niche interests, just like they kind of do locally when you're at school and you like sports versus the people that like art.
Mhm.
You're just looking at like these differences. And like, I think that the internet made it just a little bit easier to understand what other people's interests are and to be able to have a buy-in to other people's interests. But the microphones are just going to like the worst actors in it. And that's not the actors, that's the people who are handing the microphones to them.
With your photos, you say so. You do these books and these things. Can people see your fanzines and stuff? I was want to lose my thought though. Can people? I want to add links to all your stuff here to the band, but also that people can connect with you and check this stuff out and support that. And
Yeah, I'm a little bit low key on it because again, it's like me operating from the void. Like so many of us are feeling that we're operating from inside the echo chamber. But I do have a newsletter link that's on
Mhm.
my website, jenniferfinch.com, and
Okay.
people can sign up for that newsletter. And I do my best to try to do something that's just like a little bit more interesting than like maybe an average informational newsletter. So just know that going in. But there's also an L7 newsletter at L7 the band,
Yeah.
and all of the L7 um, social media sites. I recommend following those for L. We do lots of giveaways and lots of last minute tickets and lots of stuff for our fans who follow on social and who have the newsletter. I think that's a really good place to start.
Yeah. I'm going to post your Facebook and Instagram and the website and then your website also. And if you want your Instagram, whatever,
Sure.
on the podcast and on YouTube so people can see it and
Mhm.
go to it and support you guys. I mean, you guys should have a bigger audience, to enjoy you. I'm a show of all types of music. There's no types of music or person that isn't,
Mhm.
shouldn't be discussed for music. There's no guilty music. There's no anything. Everything should be celebrated, you know, or respected if you don't like it at least. You know,
Nice. Right.
that's a hard sell. It's a hard sell. Not everyone goes to the L7 and then listen to another band. You know what I mean? It's a hard call.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But
I mean, there's so much competition for entertainment right now, I think a friend sent me a link to their band and I ended up downloading a game. Just like so much. Just felt so bad.
it's hard. I mean, I get inundated with so much music. People now, I started to want to do support the bands during COVID that weren't going out there that really needed it and go to the websites. And the show evolved to be saying, "Oh, I like this band from this group and this group. They're not the same, but people should be supporting them and checking them out." And then other bands are starting to reach out to me, that could use the attention. And you're like, okay. And then next thing you know, you're in a cycle of I don't want to say no, but it's like so much out there. I can't handle it,
Mhm.
you know. So to people out there, I'm sorry. I can't do it all. We don't have time in a day, to
For
support
sure.
everybody. Um,
Mhm, mhm.
what is the at this point the pace for L7 isn't the same as it should be. The world's changed. Are you going to keep just jamming and playing and kind of finding a balance between work lives and the band moving forward, or is this
As long as there's opportunity to do L7 and it makes sense, we all want to do it. Everybody, everybody has multiple things that they do it with their lives. Um, but we have, agreed we want to see what next year is going to look like. We have some shows booked that haven't been
cool.
announced yet that will be announced.
Excellent.
Some recordings that we had done over COVID that will be hopefully released. We're working on what that's going to look like.
It will be good to see you guys out there.
We all come to the table with ideas on what those releases look like. And probably know from my point of view is self-release. I'm always that one in the documentary. Like nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. The thing I love about L7 is that even in opposing ideas and opposing positions are really well thought through. Like nobody's a dumbass in L7. And that's you couldn't ask for a better, I'm going to use the expression work group because you and I are both in tech. Like you couldn't ask for
just don't say silos.
Yeah, for people to come in and here's what I want to do, and here's the rational thing behind it, and here's the not rational thing behind it. Everyone has really good language in L7 to express themselves, and I really appreciate that.
I want to thank you for coming on the show. For giving me some time. This has been awesome, and people know more about you. Multimedia and all the things you run to hopefully inspire people, not just bass, but computers. You don't have to do one thing. You can do everything. And hopefully people will dig back and check out a lot of things we said and click on the links, and get into the L7 world. Okay. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.